Hey there, seekers of spiritual, tangible results.
Welcome to the no-nonsense zone, where common sense meets the spiritual. I'm Jason Parks.
I'm Emma Romano, your unapologetically real spiritual guides.
We don't sugarcoat, we don't dance around the woo-woo, we just deliver the raw, kick-ass truth.
Join us each episode as we dive deep into the mystical, cut through the bullshit, and show you how to manifest the tangible results you've been craving for.
No fluff, no filters, just two mentors on a mission to elevate your mind, body and soul.
Get ready to transform your life like never before. This is Soul Aligned Results, where spirituality meets the real world.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Emma Romano and the amazing
Jason Parks.
Soul Aligned Results. And today we're talking about, Jason, this is the ones all you, go for it.
Okay. What I'm going to talk about is, we're going to talk about decisions. We're going to talk about decisions, going to talk about consequences, but I want to draw it into a process that I'm going through at the moment to share that in real time. So, I'll just barrel in. So,
Go for it.
so with it, we mentioned a little bit in the last episode, we were talking about a couple of different things that happened. And one of the things I mentioned was that I was dealing with some issues with my physical health. Now, with my physical health, what happened was just very recently, everything's going along swimmingly. And then we went and did a retreat. Emma and I went and did a Soul Aligned Results retreat in Bali. And my understanding of it is it went really well. The feedback I've had in talking to people after that is really good. And the reason I say that is that pretty much on the last day, I got bitten by one mosquito the entire time I was there. But that one mosquito, I ended up getting a severe case of dengue fever. And it attacked my heart and it attacked my liver and it attacked all manner of things. And I went to hospital for a while. And since then, I've had like 6 weeks of jumble memory. So I don't really remember I remember being at the airport to go to Bali. I don't really remember clearly anything past that point, including like pretty much up to last week. So, which is about 7 weeks. So that's been an interesting process. So as part of that, as you can imagine, in order to get into a point of genuine healing, what you have to do is you have to look at the various aspects of it, because we've got a physical body, we've got a mental body, we've got an energetic body, or maybe not say body, but system. So easy to understand. So we have an energetic system, we've got a soul system, we've got an emotional system, we've got a mental system, and we've got a physical system. And they're all collection of that. They're just very simple umbrella terms. So what happens is in genuine healing, as far as I'm concerned, is that it's not about just dealing with the initial problem today and then going back to what you were doing before you had that. So for example, you had the flu, take these tablets, you get better. Okay, life's the same. So that's not healing. So because what you've done is you've only just dealt with the physical symptoms. You haven't dealt with everything that set it up and everything that's still going on in all the other systems in you. So interesting thing is me going through this is I've been drilling down. And because to get anywhere with this kind of thing, and it's important to note with things like dengue fever, Western medicine says, have a Panadol if you need one, otherwise just rest. There's nothing can be done, it's viral. So you go, okay, that's all right. So I love those things because now you can explore all the alternatives. So, and you don't have to feel guilty about it because it's just like, oh no, it's all good. So I don't feel guilty anyway. But it's interesting when you talk. Yeah, but you can explain it to people in the mainstream and they get it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to say, well, why are you choosing to do this? And because then you have to go and try and explain all the theory behind it. And this one you just go, well, they just said all I can do is take a Panadol. So I'm doing this, and seeing how that works. And that seems to sit easily with other people. But the thing about it is that when you start to drill down, you'll notice that there is a direct correlation between physical symptoms in the body and the way that your physical systems are affected and your emotional system will have a direct correlation to that. Said underneath that, there'll be things happening energetically. Underneath that, there'll be things happening in the soul. And ultimately underneath that, there's things happening in the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hierarchy, a very profound hierarchy. And in traditional terms, it's called consecration. The alignment of bringing the spirit, of getting the body to follow the mind to follow the emotion, the soul to follow the spirit is called consecration.
Wow.
And it's part of the initiation process. So first of all, you have to make a decision about healing itself. And it's like, I have a problem. If you say I have a problem and you think that what the symptom is in your body is the problem, said there's no initiation there. Said you have to start to look at it as a bigger picture and go, wait a minute, maybe this is the solution. This is how this thing that's been living in me for a long time gets fixed. And we talk about in spiritual work, we talk about the poison arrow metaphor, is that you get shot with a poison arrow and it's just leaking poison into you. And you don't notice. You have it there for so long that you normalize it. So you're just walking around with these arrows sticking out of you. And then one day something happens and it gets brought to your attention and you realize you've got to pull this arrow out. Now, the process of pulling the arrow out is awful. It's absolutely awful because it's a huge level of change. But when you finally get that thing out, guess what? That poison's not leaking in your system anymore. Now genuine healing can occur.
Yeah.
So what's happened, and we talked about this in the mashed potatoes episode. So we've started to, if you haven't listened to the mashed potato episode, go back and listen to the mashed potato episode because this sets a lot of groundwork for what we're talking about. So one of the things that happens is when we dig down, we'll notice that what we're looking for is everywhere. Mm-hmm. So we think it's just this one arrow. It's like, oh no, it's everywhere, everything. So I'll give you an example of this. This week, I had an interesting experience where I had one of my people who've been a long-term student in the martial arts and Qigong side of things, and spiritual and healing and all of those things. What happened was I saw an ad of his on Facebook. So I follow him on Facebook. He has a school and he set that up with my support and my blessing. And he does a wonderful job. He doesn't get me in to do anything, but I still work with him. And up until this week. So because what happened was I was sitting there looking at it. And when I'm looking at it, I noticed that it's like, oh, it's great. I like his articles. I like what he has to say. I think it's really good. And then I go down and I just see he's put the title truffle, meaning master, in front of his name. Now, in those sorts of traditions, there's very, very strict rules. And so and the reason is because it has to do with spiritual awakening. It's not a social rank thing. It's not that at all. What it is that you can have technical skill. You can know so many forms, so many weapons. You're competent in this, competent in that. So that's great. You test on that, all the levels up to master. But as a master, there's only one way you can really get to master level, and that is you are recognized by your master.
Wow.
And not by themselves. Your master really, if you're in a tradition that's got several masters, then they would consult. They would consult, say, this person I think's at this level. And if they get agreement, then it's like, yep, you get invited to be a truffle. You don't grade to it. There's nothing, you can't earn it by anything other than being it.
Yep.
So what happened was I see this thing where he's starting to call himself this title. I'm just like, oh, this is a problem. This is a problem. And the reason it's a problem is because there's really only two ways that could happen. So I didn't give him the title. So someone else that he's worked with, which is only a recent thing, so it would be someone that's known him less than a year or so, has recognized him as a master. Okay, that's all right. I can get behind that if that's, depending on circumstances. But it's also basic etiquette that if you had someone that's worked with you for well over a decade, and is continuing to support you, you think you'd ring them up and tell them,
Yeah.
right? So that would be basic manners. So that's problematic in itself. But the main problem is, if that's not what's happened and he's decided to give it to himself, then what's happened next is he has now demonstrated that he cannot do the next thing. And that's the problem, as I said, the problem. So when I saw this, it was a big whack on an energy level. And I wasn't angry. That's not true. There was a spirit anger that came up, but I wasn't angry at him. It was like, there's an injustice here, and I need to get to the bottom of it. Because what I did was I said, okay, first of all, how do I feel about this? I feel really sad. I feel really sad because there's consequences to decisions. And what the pain body does, I'll come back to this actually, because I don't want to confuse people.
Yep.
That's a big point in itself. So what happens is, it's like, well, okay, if this has happened, then it means one of two things. One is that everything that I had shared with this person has been thrown on the ground. So it's like, yep, just throw it on the ground because it has no real value. I said, so it's like, can you get angry about that? Yeah, you can. But more than that, I'm actually really sad because it's not the first time it's happened to me. So it's like, the question I asked was, all right, so what is it about me that makes it okay for people to keep doing this to me? And that was where I followed it. And when I followed it down, and I got back into the soul level, and I got into the spirit level of it. And what it was within my initiation, when I went to China and was assessed, rated, all those sorts of things, and I came back to share. Now, one of the big things that I wanted to do more than anything was just share it with people. I loved it. I thought it was amazing, and I thought it was really transformative for people. And I wanted to share it. And what happened was, I got rejected, I got attacked, and I identified with it. So that was when I started to get sick. I got sick. I came back from China. I was a fucking superhero. I said I had never had physical ability. Like, I went away for a few months. I came back like I've been gone a decade. I said it was ridiculous, the level of change in me. And then when I had a little bit of a rest and recovery, it was like I just muscled everywhere. I was the most flexible I've ever been. I was the fastest. The energy coming off me was huge. And then all that was moving along well. And then suddenly I got rejected. And then that happened again and again and again and again. And no matter which way I went, I got stuck and I internalized it. And then I self-rejected.
Yeah, because that's what we do.
That's right. You got nowhere to go.
Probably rejecting yourself before that anyway. And this is why other triggers come up. It's like, how am I doing it? Because like for me, I would be sitting there going, if this guy's thrown my work on the ground, like what am I throwing about myself on the ground?
Yeah, exactly. And what happened was, when I got into it, it was just like, so that's really what I've done. So by me starting to self-reject, I threw all of that away. So what it meant was, over the years, I taught people Kung Fu and Qigong and all that sort of stuff. But in the spiritual work, I don't do that. So I share that with people.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different frequency. Yeah. So it's about being embodied. So what happened was, there's a consequence, right? So I've looked at it and I've gone, I know what I got to do. I have to kill everything that I've left open there for people about my teaching. So I have to kill it. I have to pull the energy into myself, because that's what needs to happen. I need to, I had a book that I wrote in 2009. I've left that up there for access for anybody that wanted to get it. Not a problem. That is now no longer available. I had clips on YouTube teaching aspects of Kung Fu and a lot of stuff that was really not well known. A lot of deep theory to help people with their practice. That's now gone. And the reason it's not in punishing people. What it is, it's like all those threads of energy is leaking. So that energy now that I was giving to other people, in doing that, I'm still rejecting. So I have to pull it all back in so that that can die and all that energy can be reborn in the embodiment of what I take it forward as. Does that make sense?
And how do you feel now within yourself? Since you've come up with this, holy shit, this is what's the difference in your health?
Oh, a complete difference. So I've had a,
quickly was it?
that one was almost instant.
Yeah.
The moment that I realized that it was like, oh, this is happening before, and that spirit anger moved up, it was just like, bang, mental clarity switched on. And then next day I woke up and I was clear as a bell. And, and that has built again and again and again as we've gone through it.
I love that you speak about these systems, because I didn't know about these systems back in 2014. And for those who don't know, in 2014, within a month or 6 weeks, I was diagnosed with a lot of autoimmune diseases. I had optic neuritis in my left eye, completely blind. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, celiac disease, chronic fatigue. And then it was like depression and anxiety from the medications I was taking and things like that. And I healed from it. I absolutely 100% healed from it. And people go, is it something you ate? Yes. Is it something you didn't eat? Yes. Is it something that you did energetically? Yes. Is it did you have to do emotional work? Oh, fuck yes. It's never one thing. It's just not one thing. And what my body was doing, there were so many signs that I had been missing for a good 10 to 15 years. I look back and there was signs for me to look at something to do with my old mashed potatoes, my old trauma. And I would wear my trauma around like it was a cloak of honor. It wasn't my fault, it was my dad's. No, it wasn't my fault, it was my mom's. Oh no, it wasn't my fault. It was always somebody else's fault. It was never me, which then stopped me having the opportunity to learn from the old bullshit, right? So everything is done for us. It's never to us, it's for us. And then that sucks. And I know if you sit there, people are going to be like, what are you going to happen for me? I didn't know how to be raped. No, nor did I. But I get the choice of deciding who I become and what kind of character that I become and who can I be due to that fucked up thing that happened.
Exactly right.
Right? And it's no one asked to be raped or kidnapped or molested. No one. Who's got pick me. No one does. But there's something character building out of it. And I decided not to be a character builder until I was 44. And then all of a sudden went, holy shit, I'm going to be in a wheelchair in 6 months and I'm going to be in a nursing home in 2 years. Yeah. And that's when I decided to change everything. And you know what was amazing? People say to me, how long did it take you to heal from MS? And I'm going to say this out loud, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And people are shocked. I could not drive. I couldn't walk properly. I couldn't work. I hadn't worked for months and months and months. And I have got people who's got this on paper, because I was working in a chiropractic clinic. I was coaching tennis. I've got witnesses to this, right? And within 3 weeks, I was using all my systems. So I was doing the food. I was doing the body work. I was getting chiropractic care. I was doing the affirmations, I was doing the prayer, but I was looking at my shit.
Yeah.
I was looking at who have I decided to be because that happened. And I didn't like her.
Yeah.
I didn't like who I decided to be because shit had happened to me. And I'm like, well, who do I want to be? I can't change my past, but I can definitely freaking change the character that I have decided to become. And that is when all of a sudden, I literally could not feel my right leg. I was at work. I was working at a shift at the chiropractic clinic, and we just seen our last client. I was working with Jim, and I yelled out, I'm like, Jim, I can't feel my leg. He's like, right. This is it, mate. Like, you got to start looking at your shit. because you're getting worse and worse and worse. And I was like, no, not me, it's MS. Right? It wasn't the MS. The MS just came out as a little light bulb on my freaking dashboard going, Emma, you got some shit. And when I just dealt with the MS, it was like, but you're not dealing with the systems, Emma. I had to deal with all the systems, and I didn't know I was actually doing it at the time. Looking back, I go, I was working with all the systems.
Yeah.
I was working with everything. You can't just work on the food. You can't just look at the mindset. You can't just look at the soul. We are, as Jason said, we're a system. We have to look at the full system. And it is literally instant. Because people got me 3 weeks. I went back to work after 3 weeks. I was driving, working, had my feelings back in my hands, my legs, everything. Had it all back.
Yep.
Celiac. Couldn't eat I couldn't even look at a piece of toast. I eat bread. I eat all the things now. I eat whatever I want to eat. I love a croissant. Could not eat a croissant, and I would look pregnant after eating bread. I would have to go to bed. I'd have to go to sleep. My body couldn't cope with it. It wasn't celiac disease. Something was showing up to me of, Emma, you can't even enjoy your favorite things in life. So what parts of me are my favorite parts of me when I'm not enjoying? I'm going to tell you what they were. It was my personality. Because I'm pretty out there. I'm charismatic. I'm very, animated. And people would say, Emma, you're too much. My too muchness was too much, but my natural animated self and my natural charismatic self, I was putting it in that mashed potato trauma plate, but it didn't belong there.
That's a huge point.
My character, my charismatic self, my quirks, my funness didn't belong on my mashed potato trauma plate. I was adding things to this mashed potato trauma. If you don't understand the mashed potato trauma, you have to listen to the podcast beforehand, as Jason was saying. If I was adding things there that didn't belong there. And when I claimed who I am charismatic. It's like an Italian not talking with their hands. It's almost impossible, right? I'm the same. So what I was doing, the multiple sclerosis was numbing me out because I was numbing me out.
Yeah.
I was numb to my magic.
Yeah.
To who I innately was. And that's what was happening with you, Jason. People were rejecting you because there's such a big part of you that you were going, I'm rejecting me.
Yeah. Giving away your power. So it's for me, the big thing was about your precious treasures. So and that I want to talk about, because you just talked about it then, is that with your personality.
Treasures. I'm writing it. I love that. Precious treasure. Yes, go on, sorry. Yeah.
Because we go through those processes to earn those things. We do the hard yards to earn certain things. And then what happens is, if we don't hold it, if we don't treat it as sacred, what we do is we profane it. We bring it down. To profane something is to bring it to the level of the world. So it's like, okay, you've got this thing that has profound depth, and you've got a ham sandwich, and you're treating them the same. So this is a problem, right? That's what profaning is. So we get something that is profound, that is a direct expression of our soul contract, of the reason that we came into the world in the first place. And we go through all the hard yards in order to actualize that. And then for whatever reason, we make a decision to be a lesser version because other people's perception, like you said, is too big. There's a great quote I saw the other day. It's like if somebody says you're too big, it's like you're too much. It's like, that's okay. Go elsewhere and find less.
Yeah.
Right? You got to have that attitude. Yeah.
Exactly. But I didn't. I just became less.
So did I. And I handed it over to teaching. So instead of embodying, I became a teacher.
Yeah.
And through that, I was still connected to it, but it wasn't good, because what your pain body does, and what I want to talk about, is that your pain body distorts truth. Your soul and your spirit, they exist only in truth. And because of that truth, what they do is they inform the processes of the emotions, the consciousness, the genetic bodies, that they do that in truth. So what the pain body does is that it takes that energy and distorts it, and it gives you a cheap knockoff.
Yeah.
So one of the things about it that has been so interesting is that because a lot of my issues about liver. So what happens with the liver is that generally when your liver's really out of whack, you have a lot of problems with anger.
Yes.
It's that it's all over the place. I've had none. I've had no issues with anger. And even when I was in hospital, when it was at its worst, it was really weirding me out, because I was just going, I don't feel any anger whatsoever. I feel sadness. And the sadness is why the anger comes, because the liver's always trying to solve the problem. So it's never about the liver. It's always about something underneath it.
Yeah.
And this is what I meant when I said about this consequences to decisions, because what happens is there's a big movement now for a long time now where people say, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So stop fucking faking it. Start acknowledging that you may not be fully formed, but you are already that seed of greatness. You have to look at it and say, this is who I am. This is why I came in here. And yes, I might have $20 to my name. And part of my image might be that I have a multi-million-dollar business. It doesn't mean that I'm fake in taking the appropriate actions to move towards being that individual, where that's normal. Said what that is it's saying, well, I've just started. So we're just at this stage, we're at the $20 phase, right? But the $20 phase will become the $100 and the 1,000 and the 50 grand and so on until we hit where we need to be. And then that will open up and show us that we're bigger again. So there is no sense that this whole beautiful interconnectedness means that it doesn't end, that you constantly get bigger and bigger and more evolved.
You know, I used to, when I was teaching, like I would say mentoring, but I was teaching, I wasn't in that space of share. And what I mean by this was I wasn't embodying what I was sharing with other people, right?
Yeah.
And I used to tell people, fake it till you make it all the time.
Mm.
I really, it was the wrong thing for me to say. And the why I think it is so wrong is because people skip the initiation space from the $20 to the $1 million.
That's right. That's exactly why you never do it.
It's that and just go through the it's all part of the initiation. And like losing the $20 is part of the initiation as well.
Yeah.
You know?
That's right.
Who are you? What character are you building when you don't even have the $20, or you had the 20 and you lost it? Who are you? What are you thinking, feeling, doing about it?
Yeah.
Becoming that situation. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think we can talk about faking it till you make it, another podcast too.
We'll pull that apart later. Yeah. But it's interesting when you take that ownership, you have to get out of blame. That's the first thing. You can't blame anyone. They said you can't even blame yourself. They said that's disempowering. So stop doing it.
Yeah.
Just accept that what you've created up to this point has got you where you are. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's okay. And I can create better. I can be bigger. I can be more of myself and less of my pain body. And
this is a big episode.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I suppose the other thing too, it's happening in real time.
I know what I love about us, because what we do, we share about what's actually happening to us now.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I know that this will change again and again and again and again because it's done it so many times, and that's actually the process.
Well, but it's the initiation stage.
It's the initiation.
Looking at the systems.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really interesting, when I made the decision, Saturday night, I made the decision that I was going to pull that energy in. And it wasn't it wasn't to take it away from other people. It was to actually put it where it belonged. It's like, I have to stop profaning it by giving it away. I have to hold it, embody it, and then see what gets created on the other side of that.
Yeah.
So that was my decision. And then on Sunday morning, that was Saturday night, Sunday morning, I got up and I went outside to do something, and I walked past the shed and I had a pole, a staff, just leaning up in the shed. And I looked at it and I thought, I've got to get that thing out. And I pulled it out and I walked out, got a bit of space. And I'd had a form that I'd learnt for the pole that I had not been able to remember more than 3 moves of for like 20 years. And I just got up and ran the whole thing from start to finish. And not only that, but it was good. Now, what's been happening, the reason that I say it's good, that's not a brag. It's an important contrast, because up until that point, if I leant over or turn direction, I get really dizzy and fall over because of the neurological effect of the dengue.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's like, well, yeah, I couldn't even do that. This thing's got jump, barrel roll movements in the air, and it's got direction changes and twirling it around your waist and behind your back and all this sort of stuff. Just one after another, away it went. Even my flexibility was increased. And it was just like the lights were starting to come on again. And then after that, later in the day, I thought, I've got to really work on my flexibility to get that tension out of the body, get that stiffness because when your liver's heavily affected, your tendons get really stiff and brittle, and flexibility just disappears. So it's like, well, we've got to start to re-educate the body. I'd had certain questions that I hadn't been able to answer in 30 years of practice. And then I just turned around and went, I need to do this. And it was just straight away. It took me about 6 minutes to figure out the entire routine and run it. And then it was like, that solves that 30-year problem. It said all of that energy as it's coming back in, it's just upgrading. But there's consequences to those things. And like I said, all that energy that was coming in that I was giving to other people now is coming back to me. And it's not so I can sit on it. It's so that I can actually put it in its proper place and put it where it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Because you're embodying it. And then when you embody it, then you can share it in the most beautiful frequency. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's when we say like the fake it till you make it. It's like, don't. Just understand that what you've done so far has got you to a certain point. Anything you can take away from this is that your decisions have immense power. Your decisions are the human superpower. So if you claim that, then you come into your power, and you're supposed to, because you're supposed to create something in the world that's really important. And one of the things that happens to us is we'll have an impulse of the soul. An example of this is like, this happens a lot in relationships and leads to ambiguous grief. So what happens is a person can say, okay, the soul says to them, I want to have a relationship. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to travel. I want to study. I want to have my own home. I want to do all these things. That's beautiful. And then you meet Bob, right? And then you go, Bob, and then you accidentally link them up. So I want to have a relationship with Bob. I want to get married to Bob. I want to have a house with Bob. I want to have kids with Bob. I want to study with Bob. I want to travel with Bob. And then the relationship falls over and all of it goes away and we forget. And then we don't travel and we don't get our own home and we don't have kids and we don't do all these things and we get stuck. Yeah. And you get stuck. And that's because the impulse has been caught up in all of this other distortion. So when you remove the distortion, you can reclaim that energy of that impulse. People can turn around. I've done it myself. So you can have something that sat there for decades and nothing moves on it. You never did anything. Then people start telling themselves that I'll never do it. I'm too old. I'm too this. I'm too that.
Yes.
But just stop. Said stop. The impulse was correct. When you bring it back in, don't think that you think about it the way you did when you were 20. So you might be 50 now. And if you're 50 now, think about it like a 50-year-old, the 50-year-old version of you. So how does the 50-year-old version of you want to travel? How do they want to study? Do they still want to study this or study something else? Dig in and get into it, because that's what you're here for.
Oh,
That's it.
I love that.
Yeah. You gotta take hold of it, because one of the things that happens is, if you don't, you take your precious treasures and you throw them into the world, and you just let people pick them up. There's an old saying about pearl before swine, but the thing about it is, it always makes it sound like it's their problem, but it's not their problem. It's your problem. You're the ones throwing pearl before swine. Said it's not the swine's problem. So it's not their responsibility. Everyone's going to create their own thing, but you end up creating a cheap knockoff. And it's like this poor fella. Why I was so sad about this poor fellow is because I think he's a lovely guy. I think he's a good guy. I think what he does is great. But what he did was, he just cut the line of energy, and now all that could have been on that is gone.
Yep, and he has stopped the initiation stage.
Exactly right. So whatever he's created,
It's gone.
maybe he likes it because that's what he paid for it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Guys, I want to thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We love doing these. We're just simply sharing and giving people another scope of how to look at things. If you like what we are talking about, great. If you don't, fuck it off, right? You might say 10 things, you might like one. Keep it. You don't like the 9? I get it. Oh, it's all good, all right? We love you guys. We will see you in the next episode. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Emma. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.